On Wednesday, January 6th, Congress convened at the Capitol to count the Electoral College votes for its December 14th election. Meanwhile, 2 miles away, during a rally at the Ellipse Park, President Donald Trump sent thousands of his supporters to protest the count. However, he wasn't sending his best. He sent people that had lots of problems, and they took those problems with them. They were conspiracy theorists and white supremacists. They were Proud Boys and Trump fanatics. They were losers, and some, I assume, were good people. That's sarcasm, of course. I don't assume that. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If this is your first time here, my name is Gerard LeConte, and every Sunday morning, I talk to you about something that has caught my attention and compelled me to dive into further, usually something to do with American politics and government. Plenty of things have happened since last Sunday that I would love to talk to you about, but it seems silly to discuss anything other than the event that has dominated the news and our psyches since it happened last Wednesday, when Trump supporters attacked the nation's capital. Subscribe to this channel and enable notifications if this is the kind of content that you're interested in. My experience with the insurrection started with this tweet by Matt Fuller, congressional reporter from the Huffington Post. I usually keep an eye on Twitter and whatnot during the day while I'm working, but this was a pretty busy week. It's the first week we're all back from break, so I was actually kind of late to this one. The Capitol had been locked down for almost an hour as the protests started to grow in size when I saw this, but it's the first I'd heard of it. So my initial reaction was to figure out what the hell it means to have guns drawn in the chamber. What the hell was going on? However, before we get into that, it's worth taking a second to discuss the vandalism of democracy that was already happening inside the building before the rioters breached it. The only reason why this counting of the electoral vote was remarkable at all was because a very large contingent of Republican congressmen were planning to refuse to certify the votes from certain states solely because Donald Trump had told his supporters that the election was fraudulent and because those supporters believed him. Several of those congresspeople will readily tell you that they know this was a farce. Senators Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, for example, claimed that it was important to refuse certification only because the supporters believed it, even though their beliefs were unfounded. They were running a scam, playing along with a lie in order to curry favor with people who support Trump. And in so doing, they were making a mockery of our democracy and undermining it. It's really, really dangerous to tell the citizens of a democracy that it's okay to invalidate the votes of their neighbors just because they're mad about the results of that election. And it's particularly dangerous when you're doing so in an attempt to retain political power yourself. At that point, you're purposefully stress testing the democracy. There's very little difference between the behavior of the people outside in ridiculous outfits and the people inside wearing suits, except that the people inside swore oaths. Also, keep in mind that the vote that they were there to certify doesn't make sense in of itself. The Electoral College as an institution is an insult to democracy and a mockery of representative government. An insult and a mockery that they already readily defend, not on principle, but because it helps them retain disproportionate representative political power that they don't deserve. But that wasn't enough for them. They wanted to further assert their and Trump supporters' rights to matter more than anyone else. To be a sect of American citizens that need to be coddled and told that they're special. They were there to assert the right that they think they have to be worth more than everyone else. But back to the previous question, why was I seeing a tweet that said that there were guns drawn in the chamber? It didn't take much scrolling to realize the answer. Trump supporters had gone from protesting at the Capitol to storming the Capitol, and they were succeeding, and they were trashing the place. This was no longer a protest, it was a riot, and it was really difficult not to notice right away the radical difference in response to this event and the response to the protest this summer. I mean, here we were seeing videos of police literally opening the gates for Trump supporters to rush the steps, and the Capitol Police taking selfies with rioters as they ransacked the building. It was a stark contrast from when protesters demonstrated at the Capitol this summer and were met with police in riot gear and armed National Guard in full camouflage uniforms, and those protests were legitimately, seriously peaceful. It seems to me that there's a lot of overthinking when it comes to the differences to these responses, though. Of course, there's a certain aspect of race here, but the most basic, fundamental reason for this difference is that Donald Trump wanted a show of force against the protesters in the summer, who he saw as his enemies, and he wanted his supporters, who he sees as true Americans, to be able to cause as much disruption as they wanted on Wednesday. The use of force against citizens was not based on the threat they posed to the structures of our democracy themselves. It was based on whether or not Trump viewed them as enemies. Trump was reportedly reluctant to approve distribution of the National Guard, and it's still unclear whether or not he eventually did, or if Vice President Pence stepped in and made the call. In contrast, in June, Trump ordered the National Guard to open fire with rubber bullets and tear gas on a peaceful crowd so he could stage a photo op with the Bible. And this is what is so irritating to me about the Republicans and members of Trump's administration that are breaking with him now. This is what makes me unwilling to give them any credit for the break. If a willingness to disrupt constitutional order with force is the actual red line for these people, then it should have been crossed when he was using his office to physically assault American citizens when they were non-violently exercising their right to protest during the summer. Hell, it would have been way back when he was encouraging violence at his rallies, or it would have been when he was encouraging the police to use excess force against citizens who are innocent until proven guilty under law, or it would have been when he started lying to his supporters about the election results in the first place. But that's not what their red line is. Their actual red line is when Trump's violent disregard for democracy puts themselves in harm's way. So forgive me when I say that they can all go to hell. These people let the fire burn, if they weren't actively fueling the fire themselves, until the fire reached their house. Not only should they resign, but they should be refused to work in politics for the rest of their lives. They've been violating the oaths they took for years, and the consequences should be the end of their careers. That might sound harsh to some, but as the abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison once wrote, I am aware that many object to the severity of my language, but is there not cause for severity? I will be as hard as truth and as uncompromising as justice. On this subject, I do not wish to think or to speak or write with moderation. Tell a man whose house is on fire to give moderate alarm. Our house is on fire. It's been on fire. These people set the fire and fanned the flames. Plenty of the people who are sympathetic to their politics and ideology will offer them quarter. I refuse to be among them. Soon, news of the riot was spreading through my social media pages and Slack channels at work, many people asking the same awkward question. Are we supposed to keep working during an insurrection? News soon came that a woman had been shot. Politicians were locked down in undisclosed locations in the Capitol. The vice president was evacuated, and throughout it all, Donald Trump, the man who had promised these same rioters that he was coming to the Capitol with them, was entirely absent, which is among the most apt metaphors for his entire political career thus far. Things started to calm down in a few hours after the world was shown embarrassing photos of rioters smugly sitting in Nancy Pelosi's trashed office, photos of rioters carrying a Confederate flag through the halls, photos of morons in stupid costumes at the dais. The National Guard eventually got control of the situation, at times using force, but mostly holding their hands, walking them down the steps. Most of these idiots were posing for as many social media pics as possible during the insurrection, so authorities have spent the last few days tracking them down and bringing them into custody. But one thing is true, this could have been a lot worse. We later found out that there were multiple pipe bombs in the area. There was a van full of weapons and explosives. They were here to do really bad things. Trump eventually did show his face in the form of a video wherein he reasserted to his supporters that the election was stolen from them. He asked them to go home. He told them he loved them and that they're very special. It was really weird. Shortly after, Twitter took down the video and suspended his account. Eventually, Trump would release another video, one that looked strangely like a hostage video where he read a scripted address from a teleprompter. Here his tone was a little bit different. He called the demonstrators un-American and committed to a peaceful transfer of power. Right-wing media rapidly pivoted to suggesting that this was actually an attack by Antifa, posing as Trump supporters. Can you imagine that, by the way? You spend all of your time bathing your brain in right-wing conspiracy theories from Facebook, Fox News, Parler, and OAN about Antifa and the coming communist takeover, and then you finally get the opportunity to show how you're the best patriot ever, storming the Capitol in all of your right-wing glory, only to be called Antifa by the same propagandists and not American by your God King. Then after you get home and try to work out whether or not there had been Antifa at all, whether your God King was talking about you when he said you were special and that he loved you, or he was talking about you when he said you were un-American, then you see that your God King is conceding. He told you not to give up, and you didn't, but now he is. You sent him hundreds of dollars to stop the steal, and now he's giving up. And then there's a knock on your door, and it's law enforcement, because the thing you did, because your God King told you, turns out to be a federal crime. Eventually, Congress reconvened and certified the count, with over 100 Republicans refusing. Mitt Romney addressed his peers and said it about as well as anyone could.
Mr. President, today was heartbreaking, and I was shaken to the core as I thought about the people I met in China and Russia and Afghanistan and Iraq and other places who yearn for freedom and who look to this building and these shores as a place of hope. And I saw the images being broadcast around the world, and it breaks my heart. Now we gather due to a selfish man's injured pride and the outrage of supporters who he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and stirred to action this very morning. What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who choose to continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack against our democracy. Fairly or not, they'll be remembered for their role in the shameful episode in American history. That will be their legacy. For any who remain insistent on an audit in order to satisfy the many people who believe that the election was stolen, I'd offer this perspective. No congressional audit is ever going to convince these voters, particularly when the president will continue to say that the election was stolen. The best way we can show respect for the voters who are upset is by telling them the truth.
The single biggest reason why these people did what they did is because they are consistently and with increasing danger lied to by the people that they trust. This will continue to be a problem so long as the people that they trust continue to lie to them and continue to escalate those lies until it inevitably breaks the country. Democracy only lasts as long as the people who are tasked to uphold it believe that it's worth preserving. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry I got so heated. Frankly, I'm just really pissed off. This didn't have to happen. It angers me to no end to know that when Donald Trump at his inauguration talked about American carnage, he wasn't making a prediction, he was making a promise. Like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with your friends if you think they'd be interested, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications so you don't miss any episodes. Have the best week that you can, and we'll see you on Sunday.